Hello and welcome to the EuroSTAR August webinar series. The title of this webinar is Test Improvement for Agile, and today's presenter is Jeroen Mengerink. If you have any questions for Jeroen during the course of this webinar, please type them into the questions field on your control panel, and I will ask these questions to Jeroen directly at the end of the webinar. You can get a copy of this webinar slides from the EuroSTAR website, as well as view a recording of the webinar after the webinar is over on the EuroSTAR conference website. And you can join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag ESComms, and you can connect with us at @ESComms, and you can also connect with today's presenter Jeroen at @EngusVB. So now I'm going to hand you over to today's presenter Jeroen. Hello, Jeroen.
Hello everybody, and welcome. Let me get my screen. So I guess you can all see my screen at the moment. Welcome everybody. As Derek nicely explained, we're going to talk about test improvement for Agile. And why is it important to have a separate test improvement for Agile? Because we already have things like TPI, TPI Next, TMMI. Well, all those previous improvement models focus more on the structured type of testing, which is less fit in Agile. We still use the concepts of the proper test improvement methods and the test processes, but we use them a little bit different in Agile. So we need to look at it differently. So that's why we come to this presentation. At first, I'm going to start to explain a little bit on what Agile is and then what Scrum is, because they mostly come together. This will be a very short introduction because, well, I guess a lot of you know that talking about Agile and Scrum can take, well, a couple of days if you really like to talk about it. So I'll keep it brief. Then we talk a little bit about how to do test improvement for people that haven't done this before. And then we go into the assessment model that we've created for Agile and test improvement and deal with a couple of the key areas. So what is Agile? Well, it's actually being flexible and quick in many ways. So you need to be able to move flexible and go with the flow, but also adapt and think quickly. So you need to incorporate all the changes that exist in your projects and in your processes and see how you can cope with them within testing. And that's what we can do with Agile testing. We need to be flexible, so we need to know about our past and about the things we've learned before, and we need to adapt the way we use it. So Agile is being flexible, and in basis we also have the Agile Manifesto. 4 relatively simple looking rules, but very complex to really apply, stating what you should do in certain situations. If you have to choose between individuals and interactions or processes and tools, then Agile says, well, if we have to make that decision, individuals and interactions are more important. So we choose that. And for all the 4 rules, this is exactly the same. So we value everything that's on this slide, the left side and the right side, but when we have to make a decision within our project, the left side is more important. So you see we will be going for working software and not comprehensive documentation, changing over following our plan. We still have a plan, but sometimes changing is more important. So that was very brief Agile. So into Scrum. Scrum, well, Agile is usually in the field, when I'm talking to people, they say, well, we're doing Agile. And mostly they're doing Scrum, and they think a little bit of agility in it. But actually, most of the time when people talk about Agile, they mean they're doing Scrum. And that isn't, well, it's a project managing methodology. So it's used to manage a project, to get effectiveness of the team, guiding progress, solve impediments. So more process related than it is where Agile is a mindset. about how to deal with certain things, then Scrum is really a process. A process of starting with a backlog, a product backlog, stating all the important requirements, and, well, at a very high level. After that, we will go into a sprint planning session where we take certain items off the backlog and say, well, this is what we can manage in one iteration, in one sprint. In this way, creating a sprint backlog with the items and further breaking them down into work items, saying, well, this will take so much time, you will do something, we need to do these tasks to complete the different product items. And then in the sprint of approximately 2 with every day a daily meeting, a stand-up meeting, saying, well, what did we do? What are we going to do? And which problems do we have? So in the end of the sprint, we will have shippable software related to what the customer wants, because he's involved with us during the sprint. And after he has seen it and accepted it, we can do a retrospective saying, well, what did go right in the last iteration and what can we as a team do better next time? So important here to notice is that you have to say what went right and what you can do better. This is very encouraging for the teams to also notify what went right. So we've seen a very short introduction of Agile and Scrum, where Agile is just a set of basic ideas, 4 simple rules, dealing with little overhead and focused on people. And Scrum is a process management method, dealing with short iterations and multidisciplinary teams. And I think it's really important to grasp this concept, to make this clear. So we have on one hand Agile, a mindset, and on the other hand Scrum, a management process. And this difference is, well, it's too little known or used, I think, in the project world we're living in. But we were talking about improvement, test improvement in special. So let's talk about where do we come from and where are we going. In the very beginning of testing, people were all pioneering. Nobody actually knew exactly what they could do, what they should do. They were just trying to break the software to see if it worked, or there wasn't any structure in the early methods. And then later on in time we got to structuring. We got methods like TMAP, we had ISTQB, we had lots of process and methods and techniques that helped us to understand how to do testing, why to do testing, what to do with testing, and bringing structure in our process. But when we went Agile, when Scrum and Lean and Kanban-like processes came into play and we needed to cooperate more and be flexible, then the structure is actually limiting us. We need to have more freedom. We need to get less structured. And the reason I'm showing this curve is because I think we need to go through the structured phase to go to Agile. Some companies try to do some pioneering, learn a little bit about testing, and then immediately start working Agile. But I think you need to learn the basis of structure and process and the techniques that you can use flexible when you are Agile. You need to know at first how to use them and why to use them. So actually the first part is important for evolution of Agile testing. It's forming, it's setting the basis. It's creating common ground for testing and common knowledge and techniques. And after we've done that, then we can go to a norming phase, some more less structured, getting away with the waterfall methods and going into Scrum and Kanban-like development methods where we have more room for change and a little bit more flexibility. So in the end, we can grow to really Agile, performing Agile, making the right decisions at the right times, having people and interactions over processes and tools if at the moment that's necessary. So yes, we still have processes and we have a lot of stuff, but we're more flexible. So be aware, don't go to Agile too soon, because it needs to evolve through structure before you can actually become really Agile. Well, for people that have seen or done test process improvement already, there is a roadmap of doing test process improvement. At first, we need to start with creating awareness and commitment and buy-in. So people need to know that they want to improve their testing. They need to see that it's necessary to improve their testing, and then they can set goals and set a scope. So we're talking about development testing, or we're talking about broader testing, or we're talking about agile testing, or so the scope needs to be clear, and if we have a scope and we have awareness and commitment, then we can set our own goals. So we talk to people and say, well, we want to reach these goals within a year, or this is what we're aiming for. And after that, we need to do an assessment, checking where are we now, so we know where to go and how to get there. So we're doing an assessment, we're doing interviews, like normal TPI or TMMI assessments, also doing interviews. But with Agile, I think it's really important to also attend the meetings that all the people are in. Go to the stand-up meetings, go to planning sessions, go to the review, to the retrospective. Also attend this if you're assessing how to test within Agile, because this is where people are talking together and where they're communicating and collaborating, and these are the most important parts of an Agile project: communication, collaboration. So after we've done interviews and seen the meetings and talked to a lot of people, but also experienced how they are working, then we can define some quick wins and good practices. Just change it a little bit and see how you can get to the goals you've created before. Next step is, of course, to implement the quick wins and good practices and get to your goals. Then at some point evaluate and start all over again to improve even further. So we need to do the assessment, because, like what Humphrey said, if you don't know where you are, a map won't help. We can set great goals, like we want to be the best in testing of the world. But if we don't know where we are at the moment, we don't know which road to take to improve and which steps are most effective in helping us to improve. And then we get to the good practices. They describe practices that have proven to be of value in different settings. So the practices come from our testing perspective, from an Agile perspective, and for each key area that's defined in the model. And this is different from the other improvement assessments, because the other improvement assessments, test improvement assessments, do not consider the Agile perspectives. Some of the models say they're flexible and adaptable and you can be used in every context, but to actually fit in the Agile context, you need to incorporate some of the stuff that's been done within the Agile context. And of course, we provide related information, how to be able to improve and suggest based on our practice and the current setting of your company. So that's the introduction for now. We go to the assessment model. People that have seen TPI models, TMMI models, they're familiar with this kind of model. We have key areas, so areas that are important to look at when we assess how the testing is currently being done, being executed, being implemented. And each key area has, in this model, has 3 levels: forming, norming, and performing. The ones that were also in the graph I showed. The first part, getting more structure, is the forming part, then releasing the structure, norming part, and getting really agile, the performing part. Each number correlates with a question that is can be answered, and check marks actually for saying if a condition is met within the company or not. And the key areas we've defined are stakeholder commitment planning. Well, you can read them for yourself. I'll pick out a couple of the key areas for this presentation and go a little bit deeper into them. But the actual difference with the other models is here we see things like people, interaction, and teamwork in the model. As far as I know, they're not in the other test improvement models. Regression and end-to-end testing. It's a separate key area here, but it's usually it's hidden within another key area. So some areas have become more important, some are still here, some are the same important as they were, and some are new. So it's been adapted. Well, we've done an assessment before, and you can see that, well, sometimes the score is a bit strange. This specific assessment, they didn't score any points on teamwork. Well, actually the interaction was quite good, and the people part was quite good, but there was no teamwork. At least not enough teamwork to score any of the points. So here you can see that you can score quite well in some areas and less in other areas. And the aim is to grow your company by looking at all the key areas and evolving them all at a somewhat separate, even pace. So at this specific company, we've worked on teamwork and stakeholder commitment, test profession, and regression and end-to-end testing as the first steps to grow. So I talked about the maturity levels. We have forming, and that's actually setting the basis and the first steps toward working in an agile manner. This is where we get to know the structured method, the testing techniques, the process parts, all the stuff that's still important when we're working agile, but it's on the basis of everything we can do from testing. In the norming part, we are changing our process to facilitate the agile view on working. So we're going to do more Scrum or Kanban-like or Lean or more of the agile development methods. And then in the end, we're continuously improving the way we work by really incorporating the Agile Manifesto in our everyday work, by living it in the agile way. So these are the three maturity levels we've defined for test improvement for agile. As you might see, there's no initial level like in other models. A lot of the models have a level 0, which you get for free. Well, Agile and Scrum is about little overhead, so I think, well, if there's a level that you can get for free, then we can skip it because it doesn't add any value. Each key still has a number of checkpoints, and the checkpoints are continuous. So it's not meant for to lose checkpoints along the way. They're still important in your growth. So we go into our key areas. Let's start with teamwork. An agile teamwork is key to a good working relationship, a good working project. We need to respect and trust each other. And we need commitment as a team. Like the image, the ants can only achieve their goal if they all work together to get to the lead. And that's the same for us. We need to work with the developers. We need to work with the designers. We need to work with all the people that are involved within our team and work together towards the goals that are within our project. And we need to help each other. It's not just saying, well, I'm a tester, so I do the testing tasks, and that's what I do. And that's also for the other disciplines. It's not just the developer saying, no, I just do development. You do testing. You work together and you help each other. And that is what multidiscipline is really meaning. So the first level of teamwork is actually a team executing a task. They get a task, they do a task. And if we go one level higher, then the team is committed. They, as a team, are committed to do the task in a right way. And that's quite different from just executing a task. The commitment is important in the next step. And the last step is really self-managing. Okay, our task is done, we pick up another task and we commit to that. And so you see growth within a team in doing what they can do and what they will do. At some companies we hear, well, actually we hear that people should be able to do everything within a project. We need that super project person that can do development and testing and designing and actually doing all the customer stuff as well, and project management, and well, what can you think of more? Architecture. But yes, of course, it would be nice if everybody could do that, but I think there are very little people capable of doing all those tasks in a perfect way. So remember that everybody in the team has his own specialization. If you come into the team as a tester, then testing is your specialization. You should do more of the testing tasks. You should help the others with their testing tasks and their questions about testing. But you still need to be able to think from the perspective of the other roles. You cannot just say a developer to a developer, you should test also, so do it. You should understand the way they think and you should help them understand the importance of testing. You should also be able to understand that some parts are really difficult to develop or really easy to develop. So you should know a little bit about development to be able to talk to the developer better. And this also counts for the designer and the customer. And we need to assist each other where possible. If a developer has a problem with a specific part of software, then we as testers can help them just by asking questions. And maybe you know a little bit about development and you can help him by just being his second pair of eyes, looking with him and looking what he's doing and helping him to create the development tests by suggesting some ideas about, oh, maybe you should do a boundary test here. And you need to communicate your expectations. And this is also very important because a lot of friction will be within your team if you do not communicate your expectations of each other. At some point I was testing in an Agile team, and well, I'm schooled as a developer also. So I was looking into the code and I was saying, well, this could be a little bit nicer, the code, and here you should make some changes. And then the developer got a little bit agitated, saying, well, I think this is my work and you should test. You should focus more on the testing. And then we sat down to communicate, okay, if I'm testing your software, then till what depth am I looking? Functionality and a little bit more, but then I expect of you to do some more development testing and showing me that you really did it. And this helped. From then on we got along better and the project started to improve. So make sure that everybody in the team knows what's expected of them and know what they expect of you. And then we have this model about team development. It's actually based on 4 phases. It starts with forming, where you form a team. You put some people together and they learn about each other, and then after that they get into a storming phase, because you always have some alpha male or alpha female like type in a group. Only sometimes you have more than one, and then it's getting storming, and they're challenging and trying to find out who's the natural leader of the group, who stands where, which decisions can I make, which decisions should we make together. That's challenging, and hopefully that phase will be very short. And then we can get into the norming phase, where people start to work with each other, where the norms, where the different rules within the team are getting clear, and you know what to do when, and how to talk to this person, and how to talk to that person. And then finally, if you're again going to work long enough together in the same group, in the same team, you will get to a performing stage where the team will work as one. Less and less communication is needed, and still everything will go well and right. But be aware that every change that's made into the team, one person out, another person in, will set the team back to the forming stage, where they need to learn to know the new member. Only taking somebody out and not replacing him will also get us back to some storming, because the levels of who's higher than who will change a little bit. And the last thing I want to say about teamwork is keep the goals visible. If you are working, for instance, on a website as a team, and you have some mock-ups or some designs of what the website should look like, show them on the wall near to your Scrum board, so everybody can see them at every time, and say, well, this is what we're working towards. This will help to keep the team focused on the end goal, and not just on what they're doing this sprint or this iteration. And that's one of the things that goes wrong within many agile teams. They focus too much on what they're doing at the moment. They're living in that moment. They're creating maybe a perfectly working piece of software for that moment, but they forget that it has to be incorporated in a broader system. And that's why it's important to have the goal visible. It's visible so you know where we're going as a team, and you can discuss while seeing the goals. Then the next key area I'll talk about is test management. And well, this has led to a lot of discussion, because management and agile, will it go together or not? Or, well, I still think that test management is important. It will change a little bit, but we still need test management. We do not always need a test manager as a person, but management is necessary. And it will go more to people management. Getting the right people on the right teams, that's important. Who to put where, which career paths do we have, how to develop the persons, because people are important within Agile. We still need some generic test approach or strategy, some guidelines of what to do and how to do it. Not as strict as we had when we were completely down in the structured phase, saying, well, you should do this and this and this, but we still need some generic guidelines. We still do risk analysis, often implicit, but sometimes explicit is also necessary, so risk analysis is still important. Release planning, and we need the management to keep the big picture, keep the bird's eye view, not only on one team, but over the teams, and over the sprints, and even over projects, because everything comes together at some point. So if we look at the stages of test management, well, we start with a generic approach. A simple set of guidelines to help people know how to test. And then if we get a little bit further, then test management supports the process. Still thinking a little bit too much in process over people. So performing will be the last step to make within management, and supporting people. People and interaction over processes and tools. But process is still important, that's why the center is process. So what do we put in our generic test approach? Well, like I said, training and coaching is very important. In agile teams, we work with skilled people because they're self-managing and they need to do a lot and think a lot for themselves. And there's less process available, so they need to think more. So they need more training and more coaching from experienced people. We still need to think about defect management and how to do that within projects. Risk analysis, non-functionals. And end-to-end testing is also really important because most of the times within agile processes, end-to-end testing, it's somewhere in between the sprints. After a lot of sprints, a lot of iterations, then there's enough ready to do an end-to-end test. Only then the next sprint is already coming and new functionality is added. So when do we do this? And how do we do this? We need a strategy or an approach for this. How to deal with tooling and automation. Extra important within Agile, because without automation in the larger projects, we cannot cope with all the work that's coming towards us. Environment management, metrics and reporting. A lot of higher management still wants to know about metrics and wants to get reports. And it's hard to think of the metrics when you're in a project. So at the management level, we need to think about which metrics are important and what are we going to keep. So if we create a generic test approach, we actually create, well, the green layer, saying, well, we have a very small set of rules, an approach. This is what you should do and how you should do it. And the blue area is actually the area that you have to move because we still want to be flexible and we want to be agile. So we need areas to move. We need some moving space. And the red area is actually the part saying, well, if you get that far away from the test approach or test strategy, we don't accept that. So we limit you at some point. And that bandwidth is variable. It depends on a lot of stuff. It depends on risks. You can imagine that if you have a very high risk environment that you want to stay nearer to the test approach and strategy and get less bandwidth. Maturity of a team is very important. Maturity of testing is very important. If you are very mature, you will get more bandwidth because you will implicitly make the right choices. And each of these items have influence in how much bandwidth you will gain as a team, as a tester, within the testing process. Then up to defect management. And I did this presentation before and people said, well, defect management, well, it didn't change, it won't change a lot, right? Defect management. It's still managing defects. And that's true, it's still managing defects, but since we want little overhead and we want only value-added activities within our process, we need to decide when do we log a defect. Because if I log a defect, I need to manage it. I need to follow it. I need to make sure that somebody else is picking it up and that at some point I'm going to retest it. And that's a lot of overhead. If I can just walk to my developer who's sitting one desk next to me and say, well, I found a defect, can you fix it? Yes, I can fix it. So if he fixes it right away, why should I still log it? And we need to decide what to log. So if we have a cosmetic error, which is fixed right away, do we log it? I wouldn't. If we have a critical error, even if it's fixed right away, I will still log it because I want to have the criticals available for review later on. And we need to pay attention to traceability because a lot of things change within Agile. Specifications change, the way the team thinks change, the context changes, everything changes continuously. And we still need to be able to find if we have a defect, is it still a valid defect and to which version does it apply. So if we have all these changes, we still need to be able to trace the right stuff to the right connections. And it's very important to use one system for all defects. I've worked in projects where the developers had one system and then they needed to transfer those defects to another system that was accessible for the testers. And then there was another team working and that other team had another system for defects. Just make one central system. This will increase the traceability but also the way people work. They only have one system to look at and everybody has the same level of information. So when we start, well, defects are logged. That's important. Still in Agile, we still log defects. And if we log them, point. If we go one level higher, we say, well, not all defects are logged. We're going to look about when to log the defects and how to log the defects. And at the highest level, we're not worrying about defects anymore, actually. We have a focus on working software. So we go from logging defects to working software. And that's quite a change. So within defect management, we have a lot of factors that influence whether a defect is recorded and how much information needs to be recorded. So if we're co-located, if we're as a team in the same room and we work together for a long time, well, then we can at least use less information within our defects. Because half a word is enough to understand each other if you're working together for a long time and in the same place. And you can, if you don't understand it, you can go to the other person because you're all in the same room. The maturity of the team, of course, is very important. If you have a very immature team of people that just started working together, you need to log more. Else you will have the differences in understanding. You get ambiguity. The number of defects, if we have very much defects, then we need to log them. Because there is some common point that's creating all these defects and we need to find out how. If there are little defects, well, we can maybe log less, but at least we need to find out how much do we log and why do we log them. And aren't all the defects that we're logging actually the same defect? Organizational influence is also an important measure here because some organizations just live on metrics, like the next bullet point says, drive for metrics. If the organization just has a policy of you need to log your defects and we need to get reports on them, you can say, well, we want to log less, but you cannot because it's just the organizational structure. And until that changes, you must fit your agility within the organization and say, well, then this is one of the points we just have to do. And the complexity and size of development is also important. Very complex projects, defect management is more important because it helps you find the root cause of some defects. So what we've seen is that within test improvement for Agile, as opposed to TPI and TMMI, there's more focus on people skills, and just the people themselves, because the person is more important here. It's just, well, if you have a team of perfect people, then will you also have a good team? No. You still need to have a good development process also. So we need to look at not only the people's individual skills, but also how they match as a team and how they can cooperate to get into a proper development process. So the development process itself is also important for test improvement within Agile. Which development process is used? Is it Scrum? Is it Kanban? Is it Lean? Are they really working Agile? Which meetings are important? How can we use these meetings till they're in their fullest, highest value? And of course, if we're doing test improvement, testing is also still important. We need to know where we come from, which techniques do we have, which processes are present, what can we use, which we have learned throughout the years. Do not forget your past. Please remember all the techniques and the stuff you've learned within your structured, in your waterfall processes, in your all the other projects, because they're still applicable within Agile. Thank you all. I think Dara is getting the screen back now with questions.
And thank you very much for that webinar, Jeroen. I'm just going to open my screen now. So we're now going to open the floor to your questions. So if you have any questions for Jeroen and you haven't already typed them, please type them now into the control panel. And just while you're typing the questions, I just want to run through one or two slides. Just want to make you aware that a recording of this webinar will be available on the EuroSTAR webinar archive after this webinar. You can also download slides from the webinar archive. If you join the EuroSTAR community, you can get access to not only these webinars, but you can also access over 600 software testing presentations, ebooks, videos, podcasts, and more. This year's conference takes place in the Swedish Exhibition and Congress Center in Gothenburg, Sweden from the 4th to the 7th of November. So we hope to see you there. There's over 400 attendees already confirmed. And from now up until September 20th, you can avail of our early bird ticket pricing, which can save you up to €200 on your conference ticket. And you can make even bigger savings when you register a group discount where every 5th attendee goes free. And finally, I just wanted to make you aware of a conference we're running an online conference we're running next month on September 17th called EuroSTAR Online. And here we will have 6 expert sessions, in fact 7 expert sessions. We had another confirmed speaker today. And these sessions will be held by Anna Hoff, Fiona Charles, Keith Klein, James Lindsay, Stuart Reed, Keith Blockland, and BJ Rollison. And you can also get access to ebooks, case studies, and you can take part in competitions to win a free place at this year's conference. So now we'll look at some of the questions that you have for Jeroen. So I'm just, excuse me, I'm just going to open up the questions here. And the first question I have for you, Jeroen, is have you experiences with distributed agile teams that you can share?
Well, that's a very nice question. I have had some experience with distributed agile teams. And, well, as you can imagine, it's making things complex. Especially teamwork and collaboration when you're distributed is even more complex. So then we need to, well, co-location is of course preferred, but in some cases it's just not possible. So when we are distributed, we need some facilities on communication. I know some companies that do this very nicely, They have some video with a half a round table towards it, and the other team in the other location also has a video with a half round table, and they all sit at that, and then it looks like you're sitting on one round table. Well, this improves working together, but it's very expensive. Of course, Skype, Google Hangouts, and IRC, that kind of stuff will help you doing distributed agile because it keeps communication lines open. And I think, well, that's mostly the main problem, the communication lines. And if you focus on that and getting some tools to help you and aid you in getting proper communication with the other part of the team or the other teams, that will help you. That's the best thing that will help you in your project.
The next question I have for you, Jeroen, is any suggestions on how to think from the perspective of the other roles, maybe by pairing?
Yes, of course, pairing will help. But also following basic training courses in the other roles. Doing some basic development course or some basic design course, well, it will not make you a very well developer or a designer, but it will make you more aware of what they're thinking about. And I think this should be, if you are working in Agile, this should be within you. You should want to do a little bit of the other roles, or at least to be able to understand them by doing some basic training courses and maybe an advanced course here and then to help you within your specific project and setting.
The next question I have here, it says, hi Jeroen, a question about the good practices you talked about. Are these the strengths out of the SWOT analysis in the assessment?
Yeah, there will be the strengths out of the SWOT analysis, indeed. I've been at many companies at the moment for how to do Agile and seeing how testing was incorporated and what to do. So I've got a lot of good practices out of that, saying, well, this worked within several companies, so this might be a good practice. And it might not work every time, but at least we can think about this, or an adaptation of this within your context. So yes, they come out of the SWOT analysis. So the very good parts of several companies that we've seen will be within the good practices for the other companies that will be assessed.
The next question is, do you know, is there an improvement model for Agile or Scrum focusing on the development process?
I think there is. I just don't know the name at the moment. I think I will look that up, and I think we will have a post on the EuroSTAR website with some more questions and answers, right?
The next question I have is, if we do not report defects, aren't we losing data that will help us improve on the long term?
Well, I didn't say do not report on defects at all. Still, the critical and the highs I usually log, so we have that information. But indeed, we will miss some of the information but the team, if it's really a team and they're working together, then they know what's going on. So as long as the team is kept together, they will know which problems arose and how they dealt with it. And this does not always need to be documented, in my opinion.
The next question is, can you give a detailed example of one of the numbered boxes from the key areas you mentioned?
Yes, I can. Let's say teamwork. And for teamwork, one of the numbered boxes is the team is co-located. And this might not always be possible to co-locate, but if you want to improve and create a better setting for doing agile testing and agile as a whole, you need to find a way to get your team co-located. Another one in teamwork is saying, well, each team member is involved in important decisions. I've been in some settings where they just said, well, yeah, we changed something. Yeah, and what was that something was my next question. Yeah, we don't know exactly anymore, because, but, well, we didn't invite you because, well, it was a development decision. Okay, so one of my checkpoints is, yes, each team member should be involved when making important decisions, like a change in development, like anything what's happening in the project that affects the whole team. So that's two of the more specifics. Yeah, and one what higher level is team members know and value each other. And then knowing goes beyond what they're doing at work. You get a better team at the point that people really know each other and know that they're having some problems at home and they just need some encouragement every now and then. So those are some examples of the numbered boxes.
The next question is, based on your experience, do you have any suggested choice of management supporting tools or defect tracking tools?
Yeah. Well, that's a difficult question because every setting has its own context. And I prefer working with Jira and Greenhopper. That really supports Agile. You can link your defects within the same tool as you have your backlog items, and well, it's intuitive way of working for me, but it really depends on the context. So I prefer Jira.
Okay, the next question I have here is, I understand the thoughts behind having not logging a defect that is fixed by development when reported, but how does that impact the visibility that Agile brings? Is there any loss of information by not recording it?
Well, that's also a very nice question. Of course, there is some loss of information because people used to do metrics saying how many defects logged and how many defects of what level are logged and at which point in the process are they logged. And so yes, of course, you miss out on some of the information there, but the main focus for the Agile teams is delivering working software. Should the focus then not be on the working software instead of the defects that are solved?
And the next question I have is, will your TI4 Agile model be available similar to the TPI Next model?
It will be available at some point. I'm still working on refining and making some little changes on it. But we're applying it at the moment at some companies, and we're still learning and improving the model also. So when we're further on with the model and it's really more set and has even more practice than it has now, then it will become available.
And next question is there a publication describing the TI4 Agile Matrix?
There is a publication on my own blog, but it's not an comprehensive, in-depth explanation of the model. Still, I think that will accompany when we publish the model as a whole.
Okay, and the next question I have is, how and where can we write down teamwork requirements and most frequently repeated problems?
How and where can we write that? Of course. Well, if you use a Scrum board, you can always add some, print out some common stuff for your teams and hang them near the Scrum board, because everybody looks at that every day. So if you find common problems or common fixes or some common way of working within your own teams that are working in your context, then write them down and post them somewhere near the place where you're every day. So, and the Scrum board is, well, the central place where you get together every day to discuss what you've done, what you will do.
Okay, and the next question I have here, it's quite a long question, so if you need me to repeat it, I will. The question is about matrix. Do you report defects found during the sprint? There has been some discussion about that not being fair. Teams should be able to find as many defects as they want during the sprint, but what is found after the finished sprint is relevant. That shows the quality of the sprint. From a tester's perspective, it is of source good to show how many defects the developers slipped through, but is this not very agile to think like this? And like I mentioned, I can repeat that again if you like.
Yeah, I think, so the question was defects found during sprint,
Yes.
if you should report them or not, because, well, it's the quality of the team to find the defects, and it's not fair to report them, and if you think about it in some way. I think that's the basis of the question. I think you should report some level of the defects you found during the sprint, because only you have to find out which defects are important to mention and not. So critical defects and high-level defects are still of influence on the project, because there might be more errors within the area you found the previous critical and high-level defects. So I think it's fair to, as a team, be open about what you found, at least about the really important stuff you found as a team. And that's part of what I also think is agile and being open. If you're open and transparent, you just show what you found. And of course, the defects that slip through are also important. But showing what you did and what you found is I think, even more important to gain the trust of the people you release to.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we have for now. We seem to be at the hour mark. So I'd like to thank Jeroen for taking time out to do this webinar. And we'd like to thank the attendees as well for attending the webinar. And there will be more webinars as well with Ian McCowett and Andy Glover tomorrow and Wednesday at 2 p.m. So you can check out the EuroSTAR conference website for details. The webinar is now over. Thank you very much again.